As a parent, I know all British Columbians are angry and saddened at the loss of an innocent life in gang violence in the Lower Mainland. And I know I speak for all British Columbians when I say that no stone should be left unturned as we find the perpetrators of this heinous crime and bring them to justice. I listened to Chief Palmer from the Vancouver Police Department yesterday speaking about how his officers feel in these situations. I think all British Columbians share that anger and frustration.
Shootings don't get more brazen than this. Just after 9 o'clock on Friday morning, a 43-year-old man was shot dead in a drive-through line in this shopping plaza.
Since January 1st, violent crimes are up 43%.
As a homeless camp on the downtown east side gets bigger, Vancouver's mayor says it's time for the Prime Minister to step in.
She has personally lost 75 people to overdoses, including her best friend and the father of her eldest child.
We have a heart in the downtown east side that is dying.
And as the number of deaths continue to climb in BC, more than 4,500 since 2016, Gates is demanding action.
This is Vancouver, the place I was born, the place I have lived, and the place I continue to live in the metropolitan area. And it's dying. Vancouver has always had its problems, but they were never as prominent as they are now. Liberal policies, general indifference, and the lack of political will has allowed gangland violence to escalate, homeless problems to blossom, and open-use drug markets to flourish. All while the ill-gotten gains of the illicit drug trade fueled one of the most overpriced real estate markets in the world. And few cared to do anything about this as landowners grew rich. Behind the tourist veil of supernatural British Columbia lurks the failed liberal policies of safe injection sites and the cleansing of dirty gangland money inside the government-licensed casinos of the city and in the real estate boom of Vancouver.
This surveillance footage was released today to make a point.
Nobody said no. Nobody said no to taking this money, and that is inexcusable.
BC's Attorney General David Eby calls it a collective failure, blaming the province's previous Liberal government.
I worked for this Canadian government and seen how people who complained about these Liberal policies were censured or fired. Some of my fellow government employees in healthcare even committed suicide over their bullying campaigns.
The ramifications of termination so potent that researcher Roderick McIsaac committed suicide. His sister and 7 other health researchers fired by the government are demanding a full public inquiry, arm's length from government, but their request has been denied.
Prisons were closed. Mental health care for the homeless that had been thrown out of institutions years ago were poorly funded. Political debate was controlled and abolished under threat of firing. And yet, these social problems grew and grew. Even when the gang violence subsided for a few months here and there, politicians were quick to claim credit along with their appointed police chiefs, yet were silent on sound solutions when the violence quickly returned.
The distinct bullet holes, hard to miss here at the headquarters of the Vancouver area network of drug users.
It's getting very dangerous down here. Very dangerous.
Police are investigating 3 shootings that happened within a 15-hour period.
In spite of the government's efforts to crack down on whistleblowers, the problems merely continued. Homelessness became rampant, gang violence was unabated. Nobody could solve these problems because there was no political will or leadership.
The numbers are staggering but not surprising.
A 30% increase is far more than our economy can sustain, and now we know that homelessness is costing us billions of dollars. On the other side of that, hundreds of people are dying on our streets. This is a crisis.
A 30% rise in homelessness since the last count 3 years ago. Vancouver saw a good chunk of that spike, logging more than 2,100 people homeless right now.
When money was thrown toward problems, nothing happened, as the roots of the problems were consistently ignored. And everyone grew rich, hiding inside their million-dollar homes in Vancouver as the urban decay and the slow death of Vancouver continued.
At the lower end of the market, someone paid nearly $1.6 million for this house in 2017. It recently sold for a $230,000 loss.
So how big a difference does it make to you that a $3 million house is now a $2 million house?
It doesn't make any difference to me at all.
Many renters have given up on owning a home, even with the recent price drops.
Canadian taxpayers spend more than $50,000 per year for each homeless person on average, which is amazing. And many of these homeless people enjoy all the goods and services thrown at them, which is an insult to the Canadians who actually make less than $50,000 per year.
Carl Porton and Marco Tinaku are happy right where they are.
I find it's very relaxing.
They met inside Oppenheimer Park. They've lived here for months, carving out their own small corner inside the growing camp.
To live here is an amazing experience, to find out just how much for the resources around and the amount of caring, compassionate families that do not live here too, that give up their spare time, their free time, to come down from peanut butter sandwiches to full-blown barbecues.
But even they will admit things can get a bit dangerous after dark.
Just the bewitching hour, right? After supper there, when the night comes, it gets a little.
Your name to this fine gentleman here. A man was shot near the park last week.
CTV's Sinjin Alexander is live downtown tonight. And Sinj, a lot of people say it's just too much to handle here.
And these are people with degrees who make a lot of money who say, yes, it's beautiful here. It's just not worth it.
It's irony, plain and simple. Vancouver's reputation as being one of the world's most livable cities is making it unbearable.
Do you understand that people are miserable in the city?
Oh, heck yes.
Why is that? I think, in your own words.
Oh, because of debt, because of how expensive it is to live here.
A survey by Angus Reid finds Metro Vancouver's real estate is so expensive, there aren't many happy people. Many are just downright miserable.
And so it goes that the homeless enjoy heavy subsidies while the working class, who are paramedics, police officers, teachers, and nurses, often cannot even live in the city that they serve and are forced to live in outlying suburbs of Vancouver.
Vancouver's reputation for its great quality of life is being overshadowed by its affordability crisis.
I honestly was so burnt out on every level by the time I left Vancouver that I needed to be with my family.
She spent 15 years in Vancouver, first as a student, then as a journalist.
I would have to keep freelancing on the side on top of a very demanding full-time job just to make up, the rent.
Barrett wrote about a city at risk of losing its young, vibrant professionals like her, but feeling defeated, she left.
Are we really gonna be okay with a society in which anybody who has a young family or is a teacher or a social worker or a journalist or an artist can't afford to live there? Like, you're just going to be okay with that.
$7 billion worth of dirty money helped drive up the price of housing in Vancouver by at least 5% last year alone. But the criminals have been creative in other ways. The report says money is also being washed through purchases of luxury boats, college tuition, cars, grand pianos, even fishing quotas.
Welcome to the dying city of Vancouver, given to us citizens to inherit its problems from the high-paid government bureaucrats, police chiefs, and elected officials who claim to be the most qualified and smartest people in the room. We pay them well, and this is the thanks we get. And this is the future they have given us. Or perhaps I'm wrong. For 2.5 million of us who live here in metropolitan Vancouver and the tens of millions who visit, is this the city that you want? This is the city where gang violence runs uncontrolled, homelessness abounds, property crime runs rampant, and escalating prices forces business owners to struggle to keep and retain employees. Are we getting the value for our taxpayer money? I have my doubts. Meanwhile, my Vancouver is slowly dying.